When you get a prescription filled, there is often an unseen middleman increasing cost for both you and your pharmacist.
This is a situation that's directly affecting consumers.
They can come in and take up to $15 to $18 back from me.
The middleman is known as a Pharmacy Benefit Manager, or PBM. PBMs negotiate drug prices between drug makers, insurance providers, and pharmacies. The PBM impacts you and your neighborhood pharmacist in a couple of ways through two types of transactions known as clawbacks: copays and DIR fees. We'll look at copay clawbacks first.
When you go into the pharmacy, you're paying a higher price than what that pharmacy is being reimbursed. So it's very much hurting consumers.
It works like this. When you purchase certain drugs, you are charged a copay. If the cost of the drug and pharmacy fee is less than the copay, the PBM takes or claws back the difference. We found an actual example of this practice in a class action lawsuit when a patient received a prescription for an antidepressant known as sertraline. The patient was required to make a copay of $15.80. The cost of the ingredients is $2.77, along with a pharmacy fee of $1.40, for a total cost of $4.17. But remember, the patient's copay was $15.80. The extra money, $11.63, was clawed back and pocketed by the PBM, listed in the lawsuit as the defendant. It's a small amount, but happens thousands of times every day across the country, allowing PBMs to pocket millions of dollars.
Problem with clawback is with a lot of the very large front-end deductibles, the patient is paying 100% of the cost of the claim.
Susan Hayes, a fraud investigator with pharmacy outcome specialists in Lake Zurich, Illinois, says it's a practice happening all over the country.
Whether or not you're in Peoria or Chicago or New York, it's the same problem.
One of the nation's largest PBMs, Express Scripts, posted on its website in January, it does not engage in copay clawbacks, calling the clawbacks an anti-patient practice. Your prescription may actually be cheaper if you pay cash as opposed to using your insurance, a fact your pharmacist may not be able to tell you unless you ask. It's because some PBMs have gag rules prohibiting pharmacists from telling you there is a cheaper alternative.
If a pharmacist says, hey, if I adjudicate this claim, it's $50. If you pay me cash, it's $15. That pharmacist could potentially lose its contract with a pharmacy benefit manager.
We have several patients that have opted out of different Medicare Part D plans because it's cheaper for them to do just a cash basis.
The second type of clawback is called DIR fees and are charged to pharmacists.
But it truly is just a way that they can lower the amount that they're paying to the individual pharmacies.
PBMs say they charge DIR fees to guarantee pharmacies meet certain standards, like making sure pharmacies sell a certain amount of generic drugs. Dale Coley operates pharmacies in Decatur and Forsyth and tells me those fees can be clawed back from his businesses months after filling a prescription.
90 days after the transaction's complete, they can come in and take up to $15 to $18 back from me.
The fees to a pharmacist can be substantial. In this actual example, a pharmacy can be charged by the BPM anywhere from $552 to more than $1,000 a week. A lot of times you lose money, is that correct?
Correct. You think on the initial transaction, you maybe have made $5 or $10 or $12 on this thing here, and then 90 days later they'll come in and claw back or take back $15.
Susan Hayes is not an expert in ethics, but she has a personal opinion on the practice of clawbacks.
In today's environment where drug costs are going up astronomically, asking an individual patient to pay 15 to 20% more is just not very ethical in my book.
Added cost for the consumer and local pharmacists. For the I-Team, Doug Wolf, WAND News. At 24, Chris Sharkey has been taking insulin for his diabetes since
right before my 5th birthday.
Chris uses an inhalable insulin called Afrezza. It's simple to use.
Load a cartridge and literally take it.
And that's it?
That's it.
Painless, far more comfortable and easier than insulin injections.
When you don't have to lift up your shirt and grab a syringe and give yourself a shot, you can, that's a nice thing.
But his insurance company won't pay a dime for Afrezza.
They have deemed that this medication is not medically necessary.
MannKind Corporation, the maker of Afrezza, is giving Chris the inhalable insulin for free while he appeals his insurance company's decision. Without MannKind's help, Chris couldn't afford Afrezza on his own.
Roughly $2,700 a month.
That's more than $32,000 a year. MannKind is an exception. Many pharmaceutical companies are coming under fire for skyrocketing prices.
What's happening is these drug companies are raising the prices of things that have been on the market for decades.
Illinois Senator Dick Durbin and other lawmakers are calling out companies gouging their customers. One of the price hikes, which made headlines in 2016, was the EpiPen, which climbed from $103 in 2009 to more than $600. It was the drug that got the most attention, while other prescription drugs became increasingly more expensive.
I just had a family in with a child who's diabetic. They're talking to me about the dramatic increase in the cost of insulin, which is necessary for this child to live.
As drug prices increase, government is taking more interest in the form of congressional action and lawsuits. The city of Rockford, Illinois, going to federal court to sue Mallinckrodt, the maker of a drug used to treat infant spasms. The drug, called Acthar, cost $40 a vial in 2001. The city claims it was recently charged more than $54,000 per vial. Rockford, which self-insures its government workers, claims it paid nearly $500,000 for the drug in a single year and contends in court the drug maker has cornered the market.
By attacking these pricing practices at their source, the drug companies themselves, we can lower the cost of medications for Rockfordians and for citizens across the nation who have suffered similarly.
Generic drugs can often be used to hold down prices when compared to brand name drugs.
Generics can be 10% of what the brand cost can be for a brand equivalent, depending on how popular that particular drug is.
If fraud is involved, those savings could be lost. Illinois Attorney General Lisa Madigan joined a federal antitrust lawsuit in March, claiming 6 generic drug makers entered into illegal agreements to artificially inflate and manipulate drug prices for 2 generic drugs. The complaint says the pharmaceutical companies coordinated schemes to fix prices and to prevent competition in various markets. The schemes were concocted at trade association conferences, industry dinners, and female pharmaceutical representative girls' night out meetings. A 2014 survey by the National Community Pharmacists Association found more than 750 of the 1,000 pharmacists surveyed reported higher prices on more than 25 generic drugs, with costs sometimes spiking 600 to 2,000%. But in some cases, a generic version of a drug is not even available.
There are no generic insulins at all. Not a single one, as far as I know.
We need to make sure that companies aren't out there continuing to jack up the price for very crucial drugs. I've heard from the president personally, when I've met with him, that he wants to address prescription drug coverage and different prices and skyrocketing prices. So there's a willingness at the White House too.
We need some help from the doctors when it comes to prescribing, not just to take the drug that's on the commercial you see on television, but to do what's best for the patient. And that includes finding something affordable.
For Chris, a fight with his insurance company and meeting a doctor who has been successful in writing prescriptions his insurance company will accept, a doctor not based in Illinois.
351 miles away.
Michigan?
Yeah.
Drug prices, often out of the reach for sick Americans. For the I-Team, Doug Wolf, WAND News. Donuts are delicious, but a donut hole in your drug coverage can be bitter.
They buy food or they buy drugs.
Donuts are less than $1. Prescription drugs can cost thousands of dollars.
$7,000 a month.
Donuts, they're a tasty treat until you get to the donut hole, which leaves you kind of empty. That's sort of the way Medicare is. It takes care of you in old age until you get to the donut hole.
And technically, when you're in the donut hole, you don't have insurance because you're paying for the full cost of the drug.
Medicare Part D has 4 stages. First, the patient pays an annual $400 deductible out of pocket. Second, the initial coverage stage. This is where you pay 25% of annual drug costs totaling from $401 to $3,700, or $925 to you out of pocket. Stage 3, total annual drug costs from $3,701 to $4,950 fall into what's called the donut hole. You pay 40% of the cost for brand name drugs. The insurance company pays just 10%. While drug manufacturers provide the insurance company with a rebate to cover the remaining 50%. In simple terms, the patient pays $1,480 out of pocket, an amount which often leaves those on fixed incomes making difficult choices.
They buy food or they buy drugs, and most of the time they choose the food.
The final stage is the catastrophic stage. All annual drug costs more than $4,951, you will pay 5% out of pocket. The insurance company pays 15%. The remaining 80%, billions of dollars, is picked up by taxpayers. Many seniors do not know what to do about the donut hole until they are faced with it. Mid-Illinois Senior Services in Sullivan sits down with seniors to make sure they know what they're up against.
And whenever we do drug comparisons in the fall for people and sign them up for drug plans for the next year, we let them know if and when they will hit the donut hole.
I had a ruptured intracranial aneurysm.
Jeff Christensen of Effingham is disabled and depends on Medicare Part D, Medicaid, and private insurance to pay for his prescription drugs.
One of my disabilities is I was doing college level calculus, whatever, for engineering. Now I'm at a 4th grade level of math.
Jeff takes 8 drugs a month at a staggering cost of $84,000 a year.
One of my anti-seizures costs $2,400 a month. One of my eye medicines costs $2,200 a month. And then you got other medicines that cost $500 a month, then some that are just luckily only $20.
In addition, Jeff has a hard cap of $55,000 in coverage, leaving him struggling each year to come up with the money to pay his annual drug bill.
And then you have to start either paying for the medicines yourself, find a charity, or in my case I have Medicaid as a secondary insurance, but they only pay for 4 medicines.
Kathy Shackles at Mid-Illinois Senior Services says her office sees a lot of Medicare Part D patients this time of year as they are pushed into the donut hole.
Lack of money. They don't have the money to pay for these drugs out of pocket because they're having to pay the whole drug costs.
You're sweating it a little bit, wondering, what medicines am I going to have to pay for?
Some drug companies offer drug assistance programs, but it is still a worry for many patients.
These medicines are going to be a part of my life for as far as the foreseeable future.
Under Obamacare, the donut hole will be eliminated in 2020. It is not clear what will happen if the current Congress changes health care policies. For the I-Team, Doug Wolf, WAND News. "45-year-old Vanessa Tungate has been taking insulin for a decade.
I have an insulin pump, so I take it all day long.
Vanessa takes Humalog, and like many prescription drugs, its cost has skyrocketed. So Vanessa turned north to Canada. Insulin in Illinois may be more than she can afford, but in Canada it goes for
$500. Here, 6 months is $2,000.
With the constantly rising prices of drugs, many people are skipping their local pharmacy and buying their drugs in other countries, like Canada.
People are walking into their pharmacies today and seeing the price of the medicine they've had for 20 years double for no explanation other than the fact that the drug companies can do it, are doing it, so they can make outrageous profits.
Canada has tough restrictions on drug pricing. In the U.S., pharmaceutical companies have practically a free rein when it comes to setting prices.
The very same drugs in the same packages sold across the border in Canada for half the cost. Why? Because the Canadian government says you aren't going to sell your drugs in this country if you're going to run the prices up to high heavens.
Drug prices compiled by congressional Democrats show the dramatic difference in drug prices in the U.S. and Canada. EpiPens in the United States cost $638. In Canada, they are $293. The cholesterol drug Crestor, $779 here, only $201 in Canada. Some in Congress want to allow patients and U.S. pharmacies to bring prescription drugs in from Canada.
So the thought of bringing these same drugs made by the same American companies back into the United States so that Americans can take advantage of this Canadian initiative seems reasonable to me.
I call them and they ship it through the mail.
Vanessa was already a diabetic when colon cancer hit her.
I was a diabetic before the cancer, but it made it twice as bad. So it was harder to control, so they put me on the pump.
Vanessa is in remission, but cancer drugs are often out of reach for many Americans.
Letters from oncologists all over this country who tell us their cancer patients cannot afford the outrageously high cost of the medicine people need to stay alive.
The FDA does not challenge people who bring Canadian drugs into the U.S. if it's less than a 90-day supply and is for personal use.
The drug companies say, oh, bringing them back across state lines, safety issues, this and that can all be handled. And particularly if they decide to have reasonable pricing, we wouldn't even have this conversation.
It saved us a lot of money.
One word of caution, some online Canadian pharmacies are not considered reputable under U.S. law and distribute questionable drugs. For the I-Team, Doug Wolf, WAND News.